NJPW right now is when you push your roster in GM mode and SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 way too fucking hard, and too many of your guys get injured. Osprey's out, Okada's back is fucked up, Tanahashi's made a career for himself being injured a lot of the time with the shape that his knees are in, and Naito's knees aren't much better either. Hiromu's all fucked up again still. It's like, fuck, was it ever this bad? Props to New Japan for being able to survive the pandemic era like they have after all the turbulence that they went through. But lately, it's like they still, for the life of them, can't catch a break. Now, my expectations were surprisingly low going into Dominion 2021, which really sucks given that at one point I considered New Japan to be the top wrestling promotion in the world. But these days, I can't say that I've been as excited about their shows like I used to be. Their countless cards filled from top to bottom with meaningless tag team matches, driving away any reason that I had or ever could have had about caring about their schedule, and those matches always finding their way onto cards like this one, while at least here, mercifully, there were only about two thanks to COVID restrictions, and one of them actually turned out to be worth the watch, I must admit. But still, on some level, I just haven't had any real reason to get heavily invested in New Japan Wrestling with all the injuries and all the meaningless tag team matches that just provide filler and nothing else. This wave that they're on that's constantly sweeping away their top talent and preventing them from having long and memorable runs with championships, it's wearing on my patience. I mean, how long is it until Shingo's the next guy out with the injury with how hard they let their guys push themselves these days? It's like now more than ever the main events are reaching lengths that are borderline unnecessary at 40 minutes. Like, we don't need one of those on every single big show that they have. And honestly, even for as much as I do like Shingo and believe that his run with the world title can turn out to be one for the history books, after Osprey went down with an injury, I was banking on a Suzuki win more than a Shingo win. If anything, Shingo at the moment does feel like an interim champion for Will Ospreay, even after his main event with Okada in the show. I think New Japan is in a period of time when they're in need of some hard time to rebuild and get me to be invested in not only their shows, but in their roster as well. Yo versus El Desperado was surprisingly the weakest match on the entire card for me, even with the tag team matches on here that didn't mean shit. It was incredibly boring, and man, am I missing Hiromu with that belt right about now. I'm sorry, but Despy hasn't exactly been killing it like people have been saying that he has as of late. The LIJ versus Suzuki-gun tag team match only served to set up a tag title match between Dangerous Tekkers and Naito and Sanada. And while that does sound great on paper, the Golden Aces weren't exactly must-see TV when they had their run in the tag team division together. I will say, though, I do like the Red Ranger, Blue Ranger energy between Naito and Sanada. That's honestly pretty cool. The opening match with the Bullet Club taking on Chaos was almost the best match on the show, if not for the main event. I can't say much about it other than you should go watch it for yourself. And it was a match that got me pretty jacked up for the entire show, being that it was the opener. That is before the steady decline that the show wound up taking. The match between Ibushi and Cobb, while great, was very disappointing given just how fucked up the finish to their match was. And look, I hate to be one of those guys that's on here saying that New Japan has lost a step, but fuck man, now is really not the time for botched finishers, especially on one of their biggest shows of the year. And finally, the main event between Okada and Shingo for the vacant IWGP World Heavyweight Championship was the best match on the show, and hands down one of the best matches all year long in 2021, but not the best match that they've had together, given that their match in the G1 last year was the match that I feel as if they should be chasing, given how stellar it was when it happened. Now, don't get me wrong, you got more than enough from both guys for this match to be out of this world, but I'm telling you, that match that they had in the G1 last year is one to be topped. And not one of their matches against each other has been able to meet it, let alone top it. I feel as if I've gotten more of a formulaic match of the year type of match between these two, rather than a match that was meant to give us something truly special. Maybe with Okada's back being as fucked up as it is right now, they figured that the Shingo win would be more than enough to bring the match to absurd heights. And honestly, I think in a way it was. Even if I'm holding out on a time when Shingo will really come into his own as champion and not just someone on the roster who got the belt because the top guys were really fucked up at the moment. I think Shingo's going to be a hell of a champion, but only time will tell. Dominion 2021 was a really good show, but I think I'm just spoiled by NJPW shows of the past and the standard that they've inadvertently set for themselves. Dominion was still more than worth the watch at the end of the day, even with the company's flaws at the moment.